welcome to 3Q, where I interview industry professionals for just 15 minutes by asking three powerful questions. I'm your host, Rachel Vogel, and joining me on tonight's episode is Sydney Wiklund, Creator Partnerships Manager for Genies. Sydney is a rising partnerships executive at the intersection of music, technology, and creativity. Currently, she runs creator partnerships at Genies, which is an avatar tech company equipping IP partners, developers, and creators with tools to launch and co-create immersive, intelligent digital experiences. So, Sydney, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you on. How's it going?
It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great today. How are you?
Doing pretty well. Are you ready for the first question?
Hit me.
Imagine for a second you're sitting down with your 25-year-old self. What one piece of advice would you give her on a personal note, and what one piece of advice would you give her from a business perspective?
Wow. On a personal note, I would tell my 25-year-old self to not let anyone steal my power from me. And even when it doesn't feel like it, you do control your own destiny and how you react to things, how you interpret the world. So, look at life as a co-creation versus it happening to you and take the reins, make some mistakes. Definitely you'll have imposter syndrome, but you got it. And then on a professional note, I would probably tell myself that your route is not weird and every experience that you're having, it will make sense in the long run. I trust me, it will. You're gaining unique knowledge and that's going to make you stand out. So even though some people maybe have a very clear-cut path that's been, people have gone down that path many a times, and that maybe is what success looks like. It's actually not always what success looks like, and you are on a great journey.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. It is so funny. I feel like for younger people in the business, like you're scared to make a move, to make a wrong choice, but then years later, you're going to look back, realize that it was all connected. It all works out for a reason.
Exactly. And also, the music industry is expanding. And so, it's not just the big companies as these power players. Tools are democratizing, and there's just more music touching so many facets of the world now that working in music just looks completely different than what it did, 20 years ago.
Yeah, totally. I want to get into that a little bit because you work in the tech side of things. So, what excites you about like the world of tech and music and partnerships?
Yeah, I mean, kind of what I was just saying is that there's so many different ways that music touches the world now. And so I think from like an artist perspective, that's really, really exciting too, because the way that you can break in and express yourself are expanding. And so I just love being at a company like Genies where we're building a bunch of tools that are going to just put that directly into the hands of the creator to, build their brands, express themselves, connect with fans. And so, yeah, that is really what excites me.
And for someone who's not familiar with Genies, can you explain a little bit about like what you guys offer, what you guys do?
Yeah, so we help brands and IP partners really launch and co-create kind of these immersive, personalized games and experiences. So similar to how, if you're familiar with Roblox, imagine kind of like an open source Roblox where a brand can go and build their own universe, as opposed to just having, a social profile or a website and people can kind of go in there and be a part of that world and co-create in that world. And so there's a lot of opportunities for musicians and creators how they can show up in these spaces too, and that's kind of what I do at the company.
That's really cool. All right, next question. Every industry has its dirty little secrets, and you and I both know that's no different in the music industry. Sometimes people think that's a bad thing, but that is not always the case. Sometimes they can be good. So, what's one secret you would like to share with our listeners?
Okay, so I will also lean a little bit more tech on this one as well. So my secret is that with any new tech, there are no rules until there are. So some people might be scared to try new things because they want to see how it plays out, but rule breaking is what shapes the industry. So until there's a status quo and then an equilibrium is found, and then all of a sudden shaken up by the next thing. So, we saw it with the digitization of music and Napster and LimeWire. Then we saw it, on YouTube, and content moderation had to catch up. And now we're seeing it with, stuff in gaming and AI. And the truth is, like, tech is not waiting for anyone. It's just waiting to be shaped. And so I get really excited about that and really encourage people to be forward leaning.
Yeah, have you always seen yourself entering the tech side of the music business, or is that something that you just kind of fell into?
Um, I would say I didn't necessarily always know that that was going to be my path, but I definitely always was interested in new kind of emerging tech. So whether that was virtual reality, and things of that nature, I definitely was kind of just a little weird and always trying to get into this new stuff. And my grandfather actually was he recently passed, but he was an inventor and very creative and always into technology as well. So I think he rubbed off on me. But I would say that during the pandemic, a lot of that came to light, and that's kind of when I made a switch into leaning more into the music tech space.
Before we jump into the last question, so you produce a music festival every year. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I co-produce a festival called Mycelium, and it's here in, greater Los Angeles area, and it is really all rooted in deep connection, and so it's, very much a spiritual transformational festival, and it started as a way to showcase our friends, and we just had so many talented friends, whether they were facilitators, whether they were musicians. And we ended up just curating this beautiful experience that year over year started to, double, triple in size. And then all of a sudden now we have people coming to the festival who are way outside of our friends circle, but are now our new friends. And so that's been a really powerful grounding kind of thing that I do outside of Genies. That's just been fun. Love it a lot.
Where did the name come from?
So mycelium is actually, I don't know if you know what that is, but it's basically these mushrooms that live underground and connect all the trees together. And so
Hmm.
mycelium helps trees communicate and share nutrients. And that was kind of a symbolic meaning behind the festival as well, where we can all show up, we can all contribute in some way, shape, or form, be there for each other, support one another, and kind of show our talents. And so that kind of just, I think, brought out the true meaning of what we were trying to create there.
It's awesome. All right,
Yeah.
last question. Throughout your career thus far, I can only imagine you've been asked plenty of questions, whether it's been for an industry conference, the media, or even a promotion. But throughout all those interviews and all those questions, there has to be one that you've never been asked but would have liked to. So, what is that question and what would be your answer?
This is such a great question. Yes, I have definitely answered lots of questions around, music marketing and using avatars in content and one-off gaming activations. And I've noticed that in the industry, gaming really feels like a checkbox to a lot of people. They're kind of like, oh, I want that sync in EA Sports FC. Or for some musicians, gaming's so off their radar because they don't think it's aligned. But what I would love to be asked is really diving in and understanding like what social gaming looks like and also why it's so important for any artist to really think about and prioritize. And so social gaming, it really is any games that emphasize social interaction and collaboration and community building. So I think it could be a battle royale, sure, but it could also be like a conversation experience where you're unlocking things by chatting, and it can really shape a bunch of different ways. And so I think people have one vision of what it looks like, but it really is so much more. And kind of like the why it's so important, right? So we touched on this a little bit before, but new technology really continues to reshape how brands and how artists show up online. So, with computers, there were websites. All of a sudden, we had mobile phones, and now we have social profiles. And those social profiles were designed for, younger millennials and Gen Z. But now, as we think about, okay, what's the next tech device, whether that's, some sort of wearable headset, glasses, you're not going to show up in these spaces as a social profile. You're going to show up as an avatar in these like digital worlds. And this is all going to be designed for Gen Alpha, which is, this upcoming generation of music tastemakers, right? The oldest Gen Alphas right now are 14 years old. And if you think about you at like 14 years old, right, that's really when you're starting to kind of have taste in music and go and find and, starting to get really obsessed with certain artists. And so, social gaming is really where Gen Alpha hangs out, and that's where they're going to be. And this generation is used to personalization. They're used to contributing, like UGC. They want a bi-directional relationship. They're used to expressing themselves. So this is really where the world is going. So jump on board. And that's what I try to get artists to do.
Is there any specific artist campaign that you've worked on recently that you were like super, super proud of?
We're constantly testing and trying a bunch of new things behind the scenes with creators. And a lot of next year, we're going to have a lot of amazing creator activations coming to life. But recently, we were doing some stuff with Lay Banks. She has a whole avatar profile on socials that's kind of showing a glimmer into her avatar identity that is going to have a lot of other things coming out. But yeah, she's awesome. And it was a very fun way to personify her and her brand and kind of add this character and start introducing it to fans. And so that was really fun.
She's a perfect artist for that.
Yes, we love Laybanks.
Awesome. Well, it's about time we close out tonight's episode, but Sydney, thanks again for joining me. It's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thanks so much.
To everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. Stay tuned for next week of 3Q, where I interview industry professionals for just 15 minutes by asking three powerful questions. See you next time.